Finland has formally joined NATO, the world's biggest security alliance. It's a major policy shift for Helsinki, which has maintained neutrality for years. But the conflict in Ukraine changed that, prompting Finland to apply for membership 10 months ago. It was welcomed as the 31st member of the alliance at a ceremony in Brussels. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg expressed confidence that Sweden, which applied to join at the same time, will soon be a member too, though that still depends on Turkey. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov warned that Russia would be watching closely what happens in Finland, describing NATO's enlargement as a violation of Russia's security and national interests. Moscow says it will boost its own military presence on the Finnish border in response.
It is a special honor to welcome you here on this historic day, as Finland becomes the 31st member of NATO.
It is a great day for Finland, and I want to see that it is an important day for NATO too. Security and stability are those elements which we feel very strongly. And, well, we can all think that if people can live in secured, stable circumstances, that's the basic element of happy life. And you, I guess, know that Finns are very happy already. I would also see that this is a process from 30 to 31, and like you said, very nearby future to 32. That is that we work for Swedish membership very hard. We are doing that together with them, together with you, and that will continue. From Finnish point, also Swedish membership is most important. We have all the way been working together with Sweden. We continue helping them as much as possible. I have been discussing with President Erdogan. You have been discussing many times, and I think at least I have a very positive outlook for that.
Nothing should hinder or be an obstacle for also the final ratification of also Sweden to become a member. This is a top priority for the alliance. This is important for me personally, and all allies agree that we should try to finalize the accession also of Sweden as soon as possible.
And that's the scene in Brussels today. Arise chief correspondent John Cookson has been monitoring developments, and he joins me now from London for more. Great to see you, John. Just to let you know that in the middle of our discussion, if there's more activity at that Lower Manhattan courthouse, we will go to it, and we will, of course, also keep you on the line to get your analysis, which is why you're the chief correspondent, of course. You can switch from one thing to the other quite easily. But let's stay with Brussels for the moment. A historic day for the Western military alliance NATO, with Finland becoming the alliance's newest member. Tell us more.
Rush through, of course, Charles, as you said in the intro, accession to NATO, 10 months only. This is historic in itself. It normally takes, well, it has in the past taken a couple of years for member nations to join NATO. Bulgaria, for example, and Romania took 2 years. Other countries have taken longer. NATO, of course, formed after the Second World War in 1949, and this is seen, of course, as a military and political blow to the Putin regime in Moscow. Putin seeing it slightly differently. He sees NATO parking their tanks on his back lawn, so he won't be too happy about that. And indeed, the Russian Defense Minister, Mr. Shoigu, saying today that the move for Finland to join NATO will create the risk of a significant expansion of the conflict, but won't change the result of what he calls the special military operation. So dire warning there from Shoigu. And of course, the Russians saying tonight that they will take steps, which presumably means putting more Russian troops, if they have them to spare, towards the Finnish border. Putin's already said that he plans to put strategic nuclear weapons in neighboring Belarus. So an uptick in tensions, stepping back, looking at the big picture, but a historic day, of course, for NATO and Finland, the 31st member.
Yes, you did mention an uptick in tensions there, John. How much of a blow is this for Russia's President Vladimir Putin, who has long complained about NATO expansion?
I think he'll take it all in his stride. It's not as if he didn't have notice of this was coming down the line. And, Sweden also in the works if Hungary and Turkey agree. He won't be happy tonight in his bunker in the Kremlin, but, he expected this to happen. And it also gives him an opportunity, Charles, to sell to the Russian people that this is yet more encroachment or antagonism towards Russia. It gives him a chance to sell this to the Russian people, which he's been doing all along since the invasion just over a year ago. So it's a kind of advantage to Putin in a way, although privately he's not very pleased at all about what's going on.
Yes, and from the other side, the Finnish side of things, and you might have touched on this, John, but we don't mind hearing you tell it in a different way, as you do. But Finland, of course, which shares a very long border with Russia, has been neutral for decades to reduce tensions with Russia, which is its much larger neighbor, but that changed overnight as it watched Russia attempt to conquer Ukraine.
Absolutely. Finland, of course, used to be part of Russia until 1917 when it got independence, and then has remained neutral on the world stage since 1949. That all changed today, of course. Finland, a great asset, I would have thought, to NATO. It's a massive country, but small in population, only 5.5 million people, and yet it manages to raise 280,000 men, women in the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. They are well trained. They're known to be tough military people. They have more artillery pieces than the British Army. They have more artillery pieces than the Germans and the French put together. So Finland's accession to NATO will be a great asset to NATO generally speaking. They also, Charles, have been training in the past as partners with NATO on NATO equipment, so they don't have a lot to learn about the way NATO works, and these training missions that have been jointly carried out by Finland and individual NATO countries, it all helps. So it's more of a slide into the NATO community rather than a big leap, Charles.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And you mentioned the fact that they're a tough bunch, going back, I think, that whole region to the days of the Vikings and so on, like eons ago. But I mean, for those in our audience, John, who may not know, what does joining NATO now mean for Finland in terms of its defense if it ever comes under attack?
It's all down to Article 5, this famous article in the NATO Charter, which says that an attack on one nation is an attack on all. And this has only been invoked once since 1949. That was immediately after 9/11, when, of course, Osama bin Laden launched his attack on America. It came close to being invoked a few years ago when a Turkish warplane was shot down over Syria, although it didn't actually put itself into motion then. But it just gives a nation security, knowing that if Finland one day is attacked by Russia, then all the other NATO nations will come to Finland's defense. And I was in Finland quite recently on another Arise News story, and people were talking about their fears about Russian aggression since a year last March, when Russia, of course, invaded Ukraine. And there is this border, which is 13 kilometers long now, which is double the border that Russia once had with NATO. This is now, a key part of the geography of the area, that we have this new border between NATO and Russia. And because the border is there, and because Article 5 applies, then I'm sure the Finnish people tonight are feeling a lot more secure than they were yesterday.
Yes, and John, just to keep in mind that we're keeping a weather eye on those pictures out of the United States, Lower Manhattan in New York, the unprecedented day in US politics as Donald Trump becomes the first American president, former or serving, to appear in court on criminal charges. We will go to those pictures imminently, but before that, a final question to you, John. How much is this a sign of the times for European security? Because the next in line to join and help NATO expand even further, as you pointed out, is Sweden.
Sweden is a slightly different case. Hungary is opposing Swedish membership to NATO more on a general sense of things that NATO, Hungary believes, shouldn't be expanding in the manner that it does. But the more specific objection to Sweden's membership is Turkey. Now, Turkey's beef is that Sweden has given homes and security to around 100 members of what Turkey believes is a terrorist organization, namely the PKK, this Kurdish separatist group from northern Iraq, which has been fighting a war with Turkey for the last 40 years, costing 45,000 lives. This is a terrible conflict that's been going on for decades, which the world doesn't talk about too much, but it's very, very, very much in the mind of Turkey. And Erdogan, of course, the leader of Turkey, facing elections, so it does him good to sound tough. But the mood seems to be in Brussels today that Sweden will get membership, despite these objections, which will be not swept aside but got over in some way, that Sweden will become a member of NATO, that is, before July, when there's a major summit of NATO leaders in Vilnius. So Jens Stoltenberg, the outgoing Secretary General, confident that Sweden will get membership in due course. I'm not so sure it's going to be that easy, but sources in Brussels are saying tonight that Hungary and Turkey's objections will be got over somehow.
John, thank you very much indeed. John Cookson, Arise chief correspondent there, talking to me from London.